everyone. Welcome to Empowering Exceptional Minds, the podcast diving into neurodiversity through real conversations with parents, individuals, and professionals on challenges, strengths, and unique experiences. I'm your host, Maayan Glazer-Koren, an educational therapist, ADHD educator, and ASD specialist. At Educational Therapy LLC, my private practice, we support kids and adults with executive function and learning differences toward confidence and independence. This podcast is a collaboration with Wiz Therapy, connecting individuals to providers and streamlining services for neurodiverse communities. Our goal is to share strategies, stories, and insights to empower families, educators, and professionals. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast or Wiz Therapy. The conversations here are for information and empowerment, not a substitute for professional or medical advice. And most importantly, if you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please dial 911 immediately, or you can text 741-741 to reach the crisis text line in the US for support. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Exceptional Minds. Today is going to be an interesting talk. I'm excited. I'm here with Dr. Carole Hong. So here is a little bit of what are we going to talk about and what does she do? So Dr. Carole Hong is from Family Vision Care and Vision Therapy in San Carlos in California. She has over 30 years of experience, and she is a board certification in vision development and rehabilitation. Dr. Hong specializes in diagnosing and treating visual information processing disorders that often go undetected in standard A exams. So that's going to be really interesting to kind of listen to. She is a leading voice on how functional vision impacts learning, behavior, and the lives of neurodivergent students. She helps families unlock the missing visual link, especially for those navigating ADHD, dyslexia, and autism. Dr. Hong helps children and adults rewire how their brains and eye work together. Dr. Hong, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me, Wayne. I'm excited to share with your listeners.
So just to our listeners, Dr. Hong and I met in a networking event. And I knew about the profession of developmental optometry because that was part of my studies. But I know there are so many people out there that have no idea what does it mean to be a neurodevelopmental optometry. Can you please share more about what it is and what inspired you to become one?
Yeah, sure. Well, when I was an undergrad at UC Berkeley, I wanted to find a profession where I could help others. And I landed this apprenticeship internship at a developmental optometrist's office. That was here in San Carlos. And looking back, I was thinking, wow, that was actually in 1986. So 40 years ago. I came full circle. I went to optometry school in Southern California, and then I completed my residencies in New York in vision therapy and rehabilitation. And now, I came back and I've been working at this practice for over 30 years. But what really hooked me into this profession was that when I was at that apprenticeship, I remembered this little young dark hair curly kid who came in. He was so shy. He wouldn't look at anybody. He just clung to his mom. And through his weekly visits, his personality just blossomed. He became talkative and excited and had great eye contact. He also had this unusual tick, like his shoulder and his whole face would have this tick that he was uncontrolled. But certainly by the end, that tick was gone. And I just saw his life just change right before me. I didn't really know what they were doing back there in vision therapy, but I knew it was something that I needed to find out more. And that pretty much got me hooked.
That's really interesting. I love it that we always have this one kid or two kids that changed the way that the course of our profession and what we're interested in, how we can help more kids to
Yes,
do
yeah.
this, right?
Yes.
So, what is the difference between the standard eye exam and your work?
Yeah, so first it's important to know that we're not born with perfect vision. Vision develops as we experience and use our visual system. We take information in, our brain has to interpret it, and then we have to act on that information and respond to our environment. So I kind of think of it as input, then there's kind of put in your brain, how it gets stored, and then there's output, how you act on that. So a standard exam is going to look at how well you see the letters on an eye chart and are your eyes healthy, which is very important. But that's like the standard. You can, we're here in Silicon Valley, so you can think of that as the hardware. They're going to make sure that your eyes are healthy and again, that you can see certain size letters on an eye chart. As a developmental optometrist or a behavioral optometrist, a functional optometrist, a neurooptometrist, all those names are encompassed in what we do because we look at how the visual system and how a patient performs in sort of daily life. So we look at how the brain and the eyes track, how they focus, how they work together, and then how that information is processed and again acted upon. So you can think of I think of developmental optometry as looking at the struggles that people are having and looking to see if there's an underlying vision reason that can be a solution for them. And the range is so great of the people that we can help. Someone, maybe a child struggling with reading and learning, to a child that has an eye turn, to the gifted kid or the athlete who's just not working at their potential. Those with computer eye strain, younger and younger kids are on the computers all day. And then all the way to those that suffer from a concussion or a brain injury or even a stroke. Young kids that have had, let's say, a stroke in utero. So it all comes together where we look at their visual system and see how we can improve that system because vision is a learned process and therefore help them in their daily lives.
Interesting. I've never seen it as a learned process. I thought we were just like it's just developing, when we get out, we see different things, as parents.
Yeah,
We
I
kind
mean,
of a baby is born.
it comes so naturally for most people, but for others, especially neurodivergent clients, they are working hard to either get that information in or hard to process that information. And it's something silent. So it's not something you can compare to someone that's next to you. Like to say, oh, my vision is not the same. Whereas someone's handwriting, um, how they act, all those behaviors, um, kind of things that parents and educators should look for. Um, their effort, right? So there's kind of four areas um, a person may avoid, they may have inconsistent performance, they may show poor coordination, and then of course the physical cues. They might have headaches, they may cover one eye, they may rub their eyes. Um, but really avoidance, the child who just avoids the work, they can play video games, they can do other things, but they avoid, let's say, reading. Um, they might be inconsistent, meaning that they recognize the word or they decoded that word in the first paragraph, but the next paragraph they have to decode it all over again. They can't remember. Um, there may be a discrepancy between their IQ, like their verbal IQ might be really high, but their performance scores will be low. That's like the number one indicator of, let's say, a 2E
Mm.
kid that we often help. And then there's the clumsy kid or one with poor spacing in their handwriting. Um, you just sometimes you just have to ask them, how does the page look when you're trying to read? And they'll say, oh, whether it's blurry or the words are moving or swimming. Um, they don't those patients have a hard time, let's say, catching balls as well. Or it could be the opposite. They're really good at catching balls, but they can't concentrate up close. So you see the like dichotomy of someone who is really focused on something, but can't pay attention to their peripheral vision, or they're really peripheral and they're always looking around, but they can't concentrate. So it's always these sort of good at one thing, but not at another thing, often can indicate an underlying vision problem.
This is very confusing. I mean, as a parent, how can we, like, there's so many signs, but then it's confusing signs.
Yeah, I think sort of the bottom line is if your child is struggling or adult is struggling and you've tried so many other things, ADHD medications, you've had tutoring, um, then it's time to check with someone who does developmental optometry work or neuro optometry work. There are
Yeah,
certain
because go ahead.
checklists that if you check off enough marks, it can indicate an underlying vision problem. Because often a vision problem can either mimic ADHD or dyslexia or make autism work. It amplifies those problems.
Yeah,
So you can certainly have both, multiple problems, but if vision is one of those underlying, it has a big impact on those qualities.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, it's how we sense the world. It's through vision. Um, so, I'm just thinking as we talk,
Mhm.
with an occupational therapist, so kids will, be, I guess, there before they will see you.
Often that's the case, um, depending on the age that we see the kid. Um, Often they're probably next to the neuropsychologist. They're one of our top referral sources because they work on the visual system, I feel, from the bottom up, right? So
Mhm.
they lay some of those foundational skills. So if a child is, let's say, under 6, definitely all the things that they're working on in occupational therapy helps with the two sides of the body, with setting the core so that the visual system can then develop. If that core is not there, the visual system doesn't have stability to build on. You can think of it as like a lighthouse with the lights just kind of swinging around, right? You need that core. But vision is also, if you could work on both systems at the same time, the vision is top down. Your vision has to lead your body. Your vision has to tell you what's next. Your vision has to be able to fixate on the word long enough to take in that information. So vision definitely is stamina, but it also has to be able to direct your thoughts, your mind, your body, your eyes, your hand, right? Um, so yes, occupational therapist. I also refer to them quite often, um, and it's the collaboration, the synergistic effect that actually, uh, I would say, the synergistic effects helps a child to reach their potential faster.
Yeah, it sounds like this will be like the best scenario is to do
Correct.
both.
Correct.
Hmm. So how does it work? What do you guys check when somebody comes over?
Yeah. So in addition, like I said, to visual acuity and how their eyes are healthy, we look to make sure they don't need a prescription. Often patients see clearly. They have 20/20 vision or they have glasses that they've obtained, um, but maybe they feel they don't need those glasses. Like I see fine, I don't need them. Or I do need them to see far away, but then when I look up close, I really don't need them, right? So we look at how well the eyes track. So you can think of tracking as there's three areas of tracking. One is just fixation, maintaining your eyes at a certain point. Then there's your ability to follow a moving object. So follow a ball coming towards you or going from left to right, or a teacher in the classroom. And then there's a saccade. So that's called a pursuit. following a moving object. And then the saccade is how we look from, let's say, letter to letter, or end of the line to the beginning of the line, or from the chalkboard back to your desk. Any movement of the eyes from one place to another. Um, so we check those skills and make sure they're accurate. A couple ways that we do that is we look just grossly at their eyes. Can they just follow my pen tip? Um, and then we have other sophisticated tests, one where they'll wear goggles, and those goggles measure what their eyes are doing as they're reading a paragraph. And that often can tell us, are the two eyes working together? How many times are they backtracking? How many times did they go forward? Um, what was their words per minute? And then we compare that to age-matched norms. Um, if if they have trouble with language, we can kind of separate that and look at number tracking. Can they track vertically numbers, and then can they track horizontally? And is there a difference when they track vertically versus horizontally? We learn to track away from our body and to our body before we learn to cross our midline. And so we can sort of sort out, is there an underlying tracking problem versus is it something else? And then we have to dive into other things. And then the second area that we look at after tracking is how well do we focus? And when we think of focusing, you can think of it, I always do this sort of demonstrations that one of my students taught me. It's a little bit like when you had those old-fashioned cameras and you had to kind of focus it in, and it could be unfocused or focus, or let's say a microscope, right? So some patients, their focusing system is dialed in at one position and they can't easily change. So when you have to focus to the board and focus back to your page, it may take them longer to do that. Or they don't have the stamina to sustain that focus. When we look at small print, our system actually has to lift a weight to keep that in focus. And so often I call those our ADHD students who can't sustain that focus. Naturally, they're not going to be able to keep looking at the page when their focusing system is really low. The good thing about that is that, of course, we can train the system to focus better. An elite athlete, for instance, can focus 20 cycles in a minute. We'll get these kids that are only focusing 3 cycles in a minute. So if they need to copy something from the board, it's just going to take them a really long time. And then the third area is eye teaming, how well the eyes work together and coordinate. Often the visual system, let's say if I'm supposed to be looking at my page, my eyes should both be pointed there. Sometimes our eyes will point behind it or even in front of it. And sometimes with lenses and microprisms, we can help to correct that posture. And just by correcting that posture alone, that can alleviate lots of symptoms. And then teaching those skills through vision therapy or vision rehabilitation can make a world of a difference. So that's like our initial testing battery: vision, prescription, tracking, focusing, and how well the eyes team. And then from that, we prescribe glasses if needed. Then we'll say that that person might be a good candidate for vision therapy. And after that, then we have them back for a battery of tests where we look at visual processing. So we look at things like visual memory, matching a visual to an auditory pattern, um, looking at understanding of lefts and rights, sort of spatial awareness, and understanding or ability to move the body and both sides of the body. So if there's not good bilateral integration, that's like my first flag to refer to OT or occupational therapy. And then we work with audiologists. So if we pick up that, let's say, their visual memory is better than their auditory memory, or there's things in their history that indicate, often that can go hand in hand. When there's a visual processing, there's often an auditory processing. And so we refer for getting help in that area as well. And then we work with lots of tutors and, like you said, educational specialists that can do the academic work. Like our job is just to get them so their eyes can take that information in, and then that sometimes can make uh, the job of our tutors and ed specialists so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is vision therapy? What do they do in vision therapy?
Yeah, so vision therapy is basically setting up the conditions so that that patient has to use their visual system in baby steps. So it's like when you learn to walk, you're not just going to use your visual system at adult level. So we break it down so that they have the experience with their visual system that's not too challenging, but challenging enough. So our goal in vision therapy is always to be working at about 80%, right? So if it's too easy, they're not going to find that it's something worthy of practicing. And if it's too hard, then of course they'll give up too easy. So for instance, we might be using a ball that's hanging from a string, and they have to just follow it as it shifts left to right or up and down. And if they have trouble with their posture, sometimes we have to take gravity out. They might start lying down on the ground. And then
Hmm.
eventually, going through different stages of, let's say, a pursuit activity, they might actually be on a walking rail or a balance board, um, having to talk and think about what they're doing, or not think about they're doing and think about a math problem. And can they keep their eyes on the target as they're challenged more cognitively? Because vision should be automatic, but eventually, initially we have to take it down to a very low level. Well, maybe they might be putting let's say, a pen in a pen cap, or a straw in a towel tube holder, or their hand in a cup. So we do tracking activities at a low level, and then bring that up higher. We use lenses for the focusing. We use high-tech instruments like multiple tracking. So you might be looking at a device and then having things in the periphery move around, and you have to see where they are. It's like a large iPad. And we use VR. We use VR now, devices that help um, to coordinate the two eyes, or it might blur one eye within the device so that you're actively working on your weaker eye, and you're like shooting arrows or boxing to, or cutting fruit, using different depth perceptions. So we try to make vision therapy fun for sure, um, and teach them along the way. Basically, again, just setting up the conditions so that they can get their visual system to do what they didn't realize it wasn't doing.
It's really interesting, especially the what you're talking about visual processing, because what I noticed that clients that have challenges with math
Mm.
and geometry sometimes have challenges with visual processing.
Yeah, visual memory and visual memory sequencing. We use, at the basic level, we use blocks and different shapes. At an early level, it's just matching what you see on one side or in front of you to right below you. Can you match a pattern? And then can you rotate that pattern? Then can you look at a pattern and then go in the next room and do that pattern? So challenging them and their visual memory. And then can you remember the sequence that I put the blocks down, and then uh, match that same sequence? So we have games like that kids love.
And also thinking about higher grades, I'm thinking about middle and high school when they need to look on graphs
Oh yeah.
or like do some kind of a graph analysis in college.
Yeah,
If
just
you don't
trying to
know, yeah.
see where they need to be to get the right information in. And that can be certainly one of the challenges. So if they do better, let's say auditorily, when someone gives them information auditorily or describes it, can they then perform better? That's a key, that to have vision checked. Yeah.
And you know what else I noticed with my ADHD clients? I can only talk about my experience. And
Mhm.
for specific ones that I don't know how much of it was the ADHD, even though they are on medication, they told me, oh yeah, sometimes my eye will jump to the next row. And I'm like, maybe we need to
Yeah,
talk
that
with your
can be
parents about, you
Yeah,
know.
that can be where the two eyes are not coordinating well together. We do a test called the near point of convergence, and that's just taking a pencil or a pen in front of your
Mhm.
eyes and bringing it towards your nose. And if they can't get to about 2 to 3 inches, or you see one eye drift out when they're looking, even though they don't see double, that can be key. But it's also the recovery I find with ADHD kids. Like they may be able to come all the way in, but they can't hold it. And then once it's double, when you bring the pen out back away from their face, they actually don't get it single again until like I had a med student who couldn't recover until about 16 inches. So that recovery, you should double within 2 to 3 inches. That's normal, and then recover by 5 inches. But his recovery was all the way out at 16 inches away from his face. Um, and, he did everything. He had testing, he went on medications. They didn't seem to help very much. But that definitely was key. And it's a very subtle thing. So, one of my optometrists, she was working at Costco at the time, and she was great at screening those. I mean, she didn't do vision therapy, but she knew. She was like, "Oh, something's going on with your vision. You need to go get that checked." Um, so yeah, to
So
this
what do you do
day.
with a person like that with vision therapy? What is the exercise then for
Oh,
them?
so we will do the 3D imaging. So he can use the two eyes together, but he just doesn't have the stamina. So it's just also the awareness that, oh, my eye drifts out. In my adult patients that have ADHD that have undergone vision therapy, they will say like, "Oh, I thought that was just me daydreaming, but I realize I can control that now." So I had a kid who went into computer science, brilliant, but he was very distractible, and he would always have to take frequent breaks, stand up, look around, come back, and get his work done really quickly because he couldn't stay focused for that long. But really, he said to me, he's like, "Yeah, I thought that was just me daydreaming." He's like, "But I realize I can control that. So I don't daydream as much now." Yeah,
Yeah, I do hear them saying that they're tired, like they're getting their eyes are tired, they need to close their eyes. Um the effort, right? It's also
correct.
can be draining.
Yeah. I mean, really, for any of our students, even the ones that aren't struggling, they've got eye strain too. So we have tools now in lenses that basically are kind of like back support on a chair for anyone that has to do a lot of close work. Our engineers here in Silicon Valley, our accountants, anyone who has to be on the computer for many hours, we can give them support through their lenses. And we have patients that say, "Oh, you solved a problem I didn't really even know that I had." I love that, being able to just help a person so they have more energy at the end of the day. One of my patients, who's a CEO of his own company, startup, he's like, "Yeah, I used to be just wiped out and not have really energy for my kids at the end of the day. But now I come home, I say, let's go and go to the park," or, he's got some energy left. So we can help, yeah, again, just so many people that don't even realize they have an underlying vision
You
contributor
know,
to their strain.
this is so good that you guys exist, but I'm also really sad about it because people don't know about vision therapy. They don't know that it exists. They don't know that there is something beyond just, screening if you need glasses or not.
Yeah, I know we constantly try to educate our colleagues because they're, the front line. And a lot of times they're under pressure to do an eye exam in 20 minutes or half an hour. So it really becomes key to educate readers and the population that they have to ask. They have to say, "I'm having eye strain. I'm not, I'm avoiding reading. Is there a reason, right? Can you help me look for those reasons?" And if you ask your eye doctor to look at your tracking, your focusing, and how well your eyes work together, those are like the key first things to look at.
Yeah, I remember I asked my own
Eye doctor?
yeah, and they told me,
Mhm.
"Oh, we don't do that here. You need to go to developmental optimities." But I had to ask.
Yes,
It's not
yes,
something that they offered,
yeah.
even when I said, "Oh, I'm not sure this is happening. I'm thinking I'm really tired. Like, my eyes are tired. They're burning."
Yeah. So another way you'd asked me earlier before this talk was like, how else can we help kids
Mm-hmm.
or those that are neurodivergent? So I think the main thing thing with therapy is that we also just change their confidence levels, their emotional
For sure.
regulation. So certainly those kids with autism, there's kind of three types of kids that we work with. You know, there's the fidgeter or the one with ADHD, right? So they're the ones who their focusing system isn't working well or their eyes aren't converging. There's that bright, frustrated reader who can read but just chooses not to or gets tired when they read, right? So if their eyes aren't pointing at the right place, then they will get frustrated or jump to the next line. Um, but I have a kid that came in for a follow-up, and he comes from a family of readers, but every time he would get home, he would just have meltdowns. He would just like,
Mm.
he would hold it together at school, but when he got home, he would meltdowns. And the neuropsychologist said, well, I don't think he has dyslexia, but maybe he has ADHD. And certainly he's bright. Let's check his vision. And certainly he had 20/20 eyesight, right? Perfect vision. Um, but he just couldn't converge. And so after the first 12 sessions of therapy and he had his new glasses. His mom says, he's walking around carrying a book and I can't get him to do his chores now. And he's caught with a flashlight, like reading at night. And, that summer she sent me a picture with him just like with a stack of books. And so, those are the patients that I just love to help because, again, we just changed his whole life from being miserable, not wanting to do his homework to like his, self-esteem just soared. Um, and then, of course, I mentioned those kind of sensory kids, the kids that just want to hide under the table,
Mhm.
looking at their visual system, that can have a big impact. Um, and then I was just thinking, how else do we help kids? And there's a lot to do with myopia now. We can actually control myopia at an early age. We learned from the pandemic, if kids aren't going outside to play, that outdoor time is really key, especially early on, to prevent the need for glasses, and for thicker and thicker glasses, right? So we have ways to slow down that myopia from special glasses that were just FDA authorized this past November. So there's
Ooh.
glasses that actually slow down that so they won't get thicker and thicker or stronger and stronger. There are eye drops we can use. There's special glass contacts, both soft lenses called MiSight and contacts that you wear like a retainer at night. And so, the whole world of eye care is prep to help kids thrive and do better. And the last thing I want to say is also dry eye. We can help patients with dry eye now. There are not just eye drops, but looking at those glands that are in the base of the eyelashes that lead in the eyelid that secrete the oils, those oils get dried up. And if we are staring at a computer or a phone all day, we tend not to blink all the way. So make sure that you have full blinks and blink often because those keep those glands working. When those glands start to not work, then we get some eye strain or burning eyes. That can be a part of it. So there's sort of this neural part where our trigeminal nerve gets irritated because we're trying to push our eyes together. The eyes are drifting apart. That can cause the dry eye symptoms. And then physical dry eye due to environment, due to diet, due to just, again, physically not blinking. So we can do special treatments, certain medications, treatments like intense pulse light that helps patients with rosacea. We learned from the dermatologist that by doing IPL, we can decrease the inflammation in those glands and make the eyes feel better. So not only can we make you see better, feel better, look better these days, optometry is really, I love our profession. Yeah.
That's super neat. Oh my gosh, you touched so many things. And so for our listeners who, kids go to school, they do the vision screening at school,
Yes.
or maybe at a pediatrician. Everything you mentioned are to look out for.
Yes. So
Um,
So even if you've checked that box off that you have 20/20 eyesight, remember what we talked about. We need to check tracking, focusing, teaming, and visual processing to make sure um, the client or patient has all the tools to succeed with their visual system. So kind of go with your gut. If you've already worked on all these things, tried all these things, but you're still having frustrations and struggles from reading or learning or attention, then find a developmental optometrist. You can find information on our website, certainly at familyvisioncare.org. There are national organizations like College of Optometrists in Vision Development who recently changed their name to Optometrists in Vision Development and Rehabilitation to get that rehabilitation part in there. That's a great resource to find someone across the country and even out of the country. Yeah.
Dr. Hong, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share before we finish this podcast?
Yeah, I'm available for your clients, your patients. We do offer a free vision and learning screening that I'd like to mention. So patients can call our office and ask for the free vision and learning screening. Takes about a half hour, but we do check not only visual acuity, but we do check tracking, focusing, and eye teaming, and a little bit of visual motor integration. So how the hand and the eye work together. And then based on that, you will have information to know whether you need a full developmental evaluation.
Oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah, because sometimes our kids are dysgraphic and it can be with the visual motor, right, assessment.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're
Thank
so
you so
welcome. And
much.
thank you. Thank you for helping to educate others about that they don't have to go struggling. There are solutions.